Today I'm going to show you how I mix bass guitars. Last night, after a little bit of action, a beautiful lady asked me my secrets, especially when mixing bass guitars. And to be honest, it took me quite a long time to get the bass sound so that I like it in my mixes. And yeah, today I would like to show you what I do when recording bass and also how I mix it. Because there are a couple of things which are different from mixing guitars. First of all, this is my bass. It's a Fame bass guitar. Fame is the house brand of the music store Cologne. And this bass is, yeah, it's red. I don't know anything about it except it has EMG pickups. And yeah, they're active. Sounds great. It plays great and also looks great. And it cost me about maybe 1,000 euro or some shit. And got it a couple of years ago. Brand new. Still happy with it. 4-string. Yeah. Anyway. So this is my bass, but to show you what I do when mixing, let me open the editor for you. So I open it here, and as you can see, I'm using Cubase. And this is a song which I put out recently. It's called The Lazarus Effect. It's the title track of my next album. Please check it out. It's on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes and shit, Tinder, and it's kick-ass. And as you can see here, the pink track is the bass track. And yeah, I can show you the full mix a little bit. Unfortunately, you cannot hear the direct sound because I got a little bit of trouble with my audio interface, but you're hearing what is coming from this microphone. But if you want to hear the direct sound, please check out the track. It's on my YouTube channel on Spotify. Anyway, and the bass by itself sounds like this. And this is the channel strip of the bass. And what I do when recording is I'm going direct to my XFX3 and I'm using some patch, which is basically, yeah, it's a bass sound that I dialed in the newer GSP Plini plugin. I tone matched it in the XFX. So it's basically the Plini plugin guitar amp. And I did that because I like the bass to be distorted like the guitars. You can put a shitload of distortion on the bass and it will work in a heavy mix usually, but yeah, you have to find the right amount for you. I personally like the bass to be a little bit more more tonal, or you can hear more or less the melody and not only the distorted, well, percussive elements. So I'd rather tend to add a little bit of distortion, but not that much. And so the raw bass sound without any effects, except the mastering effects, is this. As you can hear, the effects, they do a lot to the overall sound. And well, here you have the channel strip, but before that I will talk about the EQ. What I do here is I set a low cut here, as you can see, about 100 Hertz, because the bass is it's not said that the bass has that much sub bass frequencies always. Especially if you're playing like a guitar riff, accentuated bass lines. Yeah, you have to find the right amount, but not too much. and I'm using the high cut which worked for me here. Of course, you can see here still a little bit of sub bass coming because it's not that stall. And what I found out is that with that bass sound, the 100 Hz a little bit annoying or sometimes pumping, so I reduced this with a small shelving filter. But again, this is something you have to adjust with your bass sound, of course. It's not working for every bass sound. But maybe it's always around there, where some frequencies are a little bit difficult with bass. What I also did is I raised these frequencies around 3K. That is basically gives you a little bit more pick attack, a little bit more articulation, and yeah, more of this punch. But it's not that much, as you can see here. The other things are way more important. And the thing with bass is usually in a heavy mix, what makes the bass different from guitars is the bass is straight in the center, as the guitars are usually panned to the left or right. That's one big difference. And another thing is you have only one bass track. And that means, or otherwise with guitars you have usually 2 tracks, or you quadruple them or whatever shit, and they're distorted, so they're already compressed. And therefore, you don't have to adjust the volume levels of the guitars that much. If you send them to a sum or to a bus, a little bit of limitation maybe, but then they will always, at least if they're high gain, they will always have more or less the same volume, this track, this bus. With the bass it's so totally different, especially if it's more or less a clean tone. Because you may know, clean tones, they have way more dynamics, and if you pick a little bit harder, then you get maybe 3 or 5 dB more volume suddenly, and you don't want that with the bass. Usually what you want is a straight even volume at all time with the bass, at least with these heavy basses. You have only one track, so you have to compress the shit out of this track. And what I do usually is I'm using serial compression, so which means I'm using more than one compressor. I use several compressors in a row, and also limiters. And that is what you find here. And you have to adjust them, of course. So let's start with the first one. As you can see here, it's right at the input. So it's just delivering this same level always. Here you can see the bass is just the same level. Of course, if you are limiting like that, you add a little bit more distortion to the bass. I have to keep in mind that. But it's affecting the sound. But in my case, I like the bass to be a little bit dirty and distorted. The next thing is a compressor. And here I use this Windage compressor by Waves Audio, which is tailored to the bass. And you can see here it's basically used more or less as a tone shaping tool. Or I don't exactly know what this compressor is modeled after, but it seems to me like it's compressing a little bit of the lower mids, which is a good thing. And actually, with these Windage compressors, you have to know their character, because usually you don't always know, or you don't know in every case what they're doing. And here we have another one, which is the Windage compressor. It's also I think out of the Waves Audio pack. Here you have a little bit more familiar setters. So you set the ratio, which is not that heavy here. basically 2 to 1. Release attack, as you may know, very important. And what these two compressors do is they don't affect the sound that much. And also they don't affect the dynamics that much, but there's still something which you can hear. I don't know if you can hear it through this mic, but there's still some dynamics which are eliminated by these compressors. Especially this pumping in the lower mids. And so I choose these ones because I like the overall sound already, and they didn't do that much to the sound. But this one was eliminating the dynamics. And then I added another one which was eliminating more dynamics. So it's more even without affecting the sounds. I think you could go on forever with that. But yeah, I was happy with the result. And then there is a multi-band compressor. In this case it's a Q-based one. These things, they are a little bit more complicated because you are compressing different bands of the frequency range in a different way. And I use this for adding something in the sub bass here. As you may know, I was cutting off here, or at least I'm setting a low cut below 100 Hertz, but there's still something here. But I want to have a little bit of sub bass coming from the bass. But not that much, because if you add too much, then it will get muddy, and also these frequencies, they cost a lot of power. So yeah, you will run into maybe into clipping or something, especially in the full mix. But what I like to do is I like to raise some narrow bands there to give it an accent. And usually what I do is I raise another band, the sub bass, with the kick drum, and then together it blends very nice, kick and bass. And yeah, I did that here, as what you can see here. And it's this band, basically 50 to 73 Hertz, where you can see raising the overall volume for 12 dB, compress it with a ratio which is rather high. And yeah, I'm adjusting the threshold, which is always something you have to do. Keep in mind that these compressors, they are reacting to the input signal. And if you don't adjust the threshold, then the compressor is doing nothing. Because yeah, you have to adjust it, that it is compressing. It starts to compress where you want it, depending on the input signal. As you can see here, it's compressing quite a lot. Also here it's compressing even more. And that is because I'm setting here the threshold lower. And on these bands, it's compressing a little bit less. At least on this one. Because as you can see here, it's a very wide frequency range. Usually it's very helpful to use a multi-band compressor, especially in the live mix, live situation, because usually you, especially if you have something which covers a wide range of frequencies, usually have, depending on the note you're playing, you have different regions causing clipping or peaking out. And you can address this better with a multi-band compressor than with the compressor which has only one band, just addressing the whole signal. And yeah, it's basically 4 compressors you have for 4 different frequency ranges. Of course, you can also hear the frequency ranges by themselves. So here you have basically 1 limiter and then 3 compressors. And of course in this case, where I'm choosing different volume levels for different bands of the multi-band compressor, it's also acting as an EQ. So if I turn it off, you will hear maybe it sounds way different. So I definitely recommend to get familiar with multiband compression because it's very helpful, especially on tracks which are solo tracks like a bass or also a full mix bus or something. I personally use it everywhere when I'm doing live mixes on the full mix, because I don't know how people can go without that. And yeah. And finally, I'm using a limiter. And that is just because these compression shit, especially this one, the multiband compressor, it's yeah, a little bit changing the overall EQ, and it may cause some peaks and some different frequency ranges which are leveled out with this post limiter. So yeah, basically my trick is to use shitloads of compression and limiters to make it very even as it gets, and yeah, also pushing a certain amount of sub bass to tighten it together with the kick drum if you want. Maybe I can show you how it sounds with the drums, just the drums and the bass. Oh, sorry, should turn on all the drum tracks. And that's basically it. So yeah, if you're after a very fat, even, heavy bass guitar sound, I recommend to use this serial compression. And as a comparison with guitars, here you have the bus where I'm sending all the guitars to, and I'm just using a limiter, overall limitation on this bus. Doesn't change the sound that much. It adds distortion here if you're using it too drastically, but yeah, sometimes I'm looking on that fader here that doesn't add too much distortion because it can get nasty. But other than that, it doesn't do that much because yeah, it's just more or less used as this is my volume fader. So usually I have to use this one for raising or lowering the volume. And this L1 limiter by Waves, it's great. It's the best limiter I know, at least of the ones that I worked with. This is the one which worked best for me. Maybe there are much better limiters out there, but for my taste or for my purpose, yeah, it's the best fitting tool. I'm using it on almost every track: vocals, guitars, drums, basses. What else? So yeah, hope this helps you. If you're mixing bass tracks, please post your comments below and show me your expert tips for mixing heavy bass. Other than that, subscribe to my channel. See you soon. Goodbye.